She said, "I can't marry into a family like yours. They're not our kind of people." I didn't defend them. I just replied, "I understand." She discovered who our kind of people were when I eloped with a woman who respected my family, and my parents rewrote their will to make her the sole beneficiary of the trust fund my ex never knew existed. The day my fiancée Vanessa met my entire family for the first time was the day I knew, with a certainty that felt like a stone settling in my gut, that I would never marry her. It wasn't one single dramatic moment. It was 100 tiny moments of quiet condescension, followed by one single, devastatingly honest sentence. The occasion was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. My family is not complicated. My dad is a retired fire captain, a man who spent his life running into burning buildings while others ran out. My mom was an ER nurse for 30 years. My uncles and aunts are tradesmen, teachers, and small business owners. They are loud, they laugh from their bellies, they hug too hard, and their homes are filled with the smell of good food and the sound of stories being told over one another. They are, in a word, real. I thought this was our greatest strength. Vanessa, my fiancée of 1 year, saw it differently. She was a woman who lived her life like a perfectly curated social media feed. She was beautiful, ambitious, and moved through the world with a polished grace that I had, for a time, mistaken for substance. She was obsessed with networking, with knowing the right people, and with building a life that looked successful to the outside world. I thought her ambition would complement my more grounded nature. I see now that she saw my background as a temporary inconvenience, a starter home she could eventually renovate into something more respectable. The party was at my parents' modest, comfortable house, the same house I grew up in. My family, knowing how important Vanessa was to me, rolled out the red carpet. My mom made her famous lasagna. My dad, a man of few words, tried to engage her by showing her his prized collection of antique fire helmets. My cousins invited her to join their rowdy card game. Vanessa was a master of polite, surface-level charm. She smiled, she nodded, she said all the right things. But I was watching her. I saw the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. I saw the slight, almost imperceptible wrinkle of her nose when my uncle told a slightly off-color joke. I saw her subtly wiping her hand on a napkin after my aunt gave her a welcoming hug. I saw her checking her phone under the table every 5 minutes, her face a mask of bored tolerance. She was an anthropologist observing a primitive tribe she had no intention of joining. The drive home was quiet. She stared out the window, the silence growing heavier with each passing mile. I knew something was coming. Finally, as we pulled onto our street, she turned to me. "I can't do it, Alex," she said, her voice flat and final. "Can't do what?" I asked, though I already knew. "I can't marry into a family like yours," she said, the words dripping with a kind of weary disdain. "They're lovely people, I'm sure, but they're not. They're not our kind of people. Our kind of people." The words hung in the air between us. I thought about my father, who once pulled a child from a 3-alarm fire and considered it just another Tuesday. I thought about my mother, who had held the hands of more dying people than Vanessa had ever met. I thought about the decades of hard work, quiet dignity, and unconditional love that filled that house she had just dismissed with a wave of her hand. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound sense of pity for her. She was so blinded by her pursuit of superficial status that she couldn't recognize true wealth when it was sitting right in front of her, offering her lasagna. I didn't argue. I didn't defend them. Arguing would have been pointless. It would have meant that her opinion of them mattered. It didn't. All that mattered was the truth she had just revealed. I pulled the car into our driveway and turned off the engine. I turned to her and said, my voice completely calm, "I understand." And I did. I understood everything. I understood that she would never be part of my family because she lacked the one credential they required, a good heart. I understood that the life she wanted was a life I could never give her, not because I lacked the means, but because I lacked the desire. I understood that our engagement was over. What she didn't understand, what she couldn't have possibly known, was the secret my family held. The secret that made her judgment not just cruel, but spectacularly, ironically foolish. My grandfather, a man who started with nothing, had been a brilliant and disciplined investor. He had built a fortune, a massive, sprawling trust fund, and left it to my parents. My parents, being the people they are, never touched it. They lived their lives on their own terms, on their own salaries, believing that unearned wealth was a burden, not a prize. They lived in their modest house and drove their reliable cars, all while sitting on a foundation of wealth that could have bought and sold every single one of the right people Vanessa so admired. She had just looked down her nose at a multi-million-dollar legacy. She thought she was passing judgment on a family of simple means. In reality, she had just failed the most important job interview of her life. And the severance package was going to be brutal. Update 1. The day after the party, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. The illusion that had been my relationship with Vanessa had been shattered and I was left with the clean, hard lines of reality. There was no grand, dramatic confrontation. The war had been lost for her in that single car ride. All that remained was the formal surrender. I made coffee and waited for her to wake up. When she came into the kitchen, she looked nervous. She probably expected me to either apologize for my family's behavior or to start a fight. She was prepared for an emotional battle. She was completely unprepared for my calm indifference. "Good morning," I said, handing her a mug. "Vanessa, I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and you were right. We want very different things in life, and we are looking for very different kinds of people to build a life with. It's become clear that this isn't going to work." I took the engagement ring off the counter where she had left it the night before and held it out to her. It felt like a prop from a play that had finished its run. She stared at me, dumbfounded. "What are you saying? Are you breaking up with me because I was honest with you?" "No," I said simply. "I'm breaking up with you because your honesty revealed that we are fundamentally incompatible. Your values are not my values. What you respect, I find hollow. And what I respect, you can't even see. There's no fixing that. It's better we end this now, before we build a life on a foundation that's doomed to collapse." She tried to argue, to backpedal. She said she didn't mean it the way it sounded. She said she could learn to appreciate my family. But it was too late. The words were already out. You can't unfire a bullet. I remained a calm, immovable wall. I told her I would help her pack and arrange for movers. By the end of the day, she seemed to realize it was hopeless. She made a few tearful calls and arranged for her sister to help her move her things out the next day. The end of our 4-year relationship was a quiet logistical process. The weeks that followed were like waking up from a long, confusing dream. I reconnected with my old friends, the ones Vanessa had subtly dismissed as not being ambitious enough. I spent weekends at my parents' house, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to be there. I felt like I was reclaiming my own identity, an identity I had subconsciously suppressed to make her more comfortable. About 4 months later, I ran into an old friend from college, a woman named Laura. We'd lost touch over the years, but we fell back into conversation as if no time had passed. She was a veterinarian now, with a kind smile and an easy laugh. She had dirt under her fingernails from working in her garden that morning, and she didn't seem the least bit self-conscious about it. We had coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into a series of long, rambling conversations about everything and nothing. With Laura, things were simple. There were no pretenses, no hidden agendas. She was completely, refreshingly herself. A few weeks into dating, I knew I had to introduce her to my family. I was nervous, not because I was worried about what she would think of them, but because I was still carrying the scars from Vanessa's visit. The difference was night and day. Laura walked into my parents' chaotic, loud home and fit in instantly. She laughed at my dad's terrible jokes. She brought a homemade apple pie and insisted on helping my mom with the dishes, and they ended up talking for an hour over the sink. She played cards with my cousins and wasn't afraid to talk a little trash. She saw my family not for their superficial status, but for what they were, warm, loving, and good. She saw the real treasure. Our relationship progressed naturally and quickly. We didn't need a long, drawn-out engagement. We knew what we wanted. 6 months after we reconnected, we decided to elope. We flew to the coast and got married on a cliff overlooking the ocean at sunset. The only witnesses were my parents and my brother. It was a simple, powerful ceremony. It wasn't about the show, the guests, or the venue. It was about the vows. It was real. I had found my kind of person. Update 2. We kept our elopement quiet for a week, enjoying a short, simple honeymoon. When we returned, we announced it with a single happy photo on social media. The congratulations poured in from friends and family. And then, as I knew it would, the message from Vanessa arrived. It came to my email. A bitter, acidic little note. So you got married. Didn't take you long to replace me. I guess you found someone who fits in better with your charming little family. I hope you're both very happy in your simple little life. The condescension was still there. The unshakable belief that she had dodged a bullet. That she was destined for bigger and better things than my simple family. I read the email to my new wife, Laura. She just shook her head, a sad smile on her face. She has no idea what she's talking about, does she? She said. No, I replied. She really doesn't. A month later, my parents invited Laura and me over for dinner. It was a special dinner, they said. When we arrived, they had a bottle of expensive champagne on the table. Something they rarely did. After we ate, my father cleared his throat and looked at both of us. Alex, he began. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking since your wedding. We've been watching you for a long time. We saw how you were with Vanessa. We saw the ways she tried to change you, the ways she looked down on us. We kept our mouth shut because it was your life, but it broke our hearts. He turned to Laura. And then you came along, Laura. You walked into our home, and you brought a light with you. You see us for who we are. You value what we value. You understand that the strength of a family isn't in its bank account, but in its character. My mother then placed a thick, formal-looking document on the table. We met with our estate lawyer last week, she said, her voice thick with emotion. We have rewritten our will in the terms of the family trust, my father explained. The trust set up by my grandfather was the source of their wealth, a fortune they had purposely chosen not to display. They had always intended for me to inherit it, to manage it responsibly for future generations. But a legacy isn't just about money, son, he said. It's about values. We need to know that the person who shares in this legacy understands what it truly means. Vanessa never would have. Laura does. He explained the change. They had restructured the trust. Upon their passing, I would still be the primary trustee, but they had created a new significant clause. They had named Laura as the sole, direct beneficiary of a massive portion of the trust's assets, completely independent of me. It was a sum that would ensure her security and comfort for the rest of her life, regardless of what happened between us. The legal language explicitly stated that this was being done in recognition of her outstanding character and her immediate and loving embrace of the core values of our family. It was an unbelievable gesture. It was my parents' way of officially and legally welcoming her into the family, of protecting her, and of making a definitive statement about what truly mattered to them. It was also, I realized, the final devastating blow to Vanessa, a woman who would now never know what she had so arrogantly thrown away. The news had to get back to her. I wouldn't be the one to do it. That would be too petty. But my cousin, who works in finance and knew the generalities of the family's situation, was at that dinner. He had never liked Vanessa. I knew with absolute certainty that the information was now in the wild. All I had to do was wait for it to travel along the gossip grapevine. Final update. It took about 2 months for the news to complete its journey. I got the story from a college friend who still runs in some of the same social circles as Vanessa. He called me, his voice a mixture of shock and amusement. Apparently, my cousin had let it slip to a mutual acquaintance that my unassuming parents were in fact incredibly wealthy and that they had been so taken with my new wife, Laura, that they had rewritten their entire estate to make her a primary beneficiary. The story, embellished with each retelling, made its way to Vanessa. Her reaction, as described to me, was nothing short of explosive. It was a meltdown of epic proportions. She didn't cry. She raged. She wasn't heartbroken that she had lost me. She was incandescent with fury that she had misjudged the market so badly. The family she had deemed not our kind of people was secretly wealthier than all the shallow, status-obsessed people she had spent her life trying to impress. Her entire worldview, her entire system for judging the worth of other people had been exposed as a complete and utter fraud. She hadn't just dodged a bullet. She had dodged a winning lottery ticket because she didn't like the look of the men selling it. She sent me one final, unhinged email. It was a long, rambling tirade full of accusations and rage. She called me a liar, a manipulator for hiding my family's wealth from her. She claimed I had done it on purpose to test her. It was the desperate, nonsensical rant of a person forced to confront the magnitude of her own greed and foolishness. I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to my lawyer in case her instability ever turned into a real problem, and then I deleted it. My life with Laura is everything I ever wanted. It's built on respect, laughter, and shared values. The trust fund sits there, a quiet testament to a grandfather's hard work. We haven't touched it, and we don't plan to for a long time. My parents are thrilled. They adore Laura, and they have the peace of mind of knowing that the legacy they have protected will be passed on to people who understand its true value. Vanessa was so busy judging the cover that she never even thought to read the book. She saw a simple, middle-class family and walked away in search of something more glamorous. She had no idea that the simple cover was binding a story of immense wealth, not of money, but of character. The money was just the tool that revealed the poverty of hers. She didn't lose a fortune. She lost a family, and that's a debt she can never repay.